The whole town of Cedar Falls still remembers the sound. Not the shouting, not the sirens. The sound of a rich man's confidence shattering like cheap glass on a diner floor. Victor Hale owned half the town. Officer Dean Marsh carried a badge and a loaded gun. Together, they had crushed anyone who ever stood in their way. But on that Tuesday morning, they made the fatal mistake of putting their hands on the wrong stranger. A quiet man in a military uniform, eating eggs alone, with a German shepherd resting at his boots. They didn't know his name. They didn't know what he was. They were about to find out. Before we go on, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, let's get back to it. Ethan Cole hadn't slept in 31 hours. He pulled into Cedar Falls just before sunrise, the kind of small town that still had one traffic light and a church steeple taller than anything else on the skyline. His truck was dusty. His eyes were heavy. His Navy work uniform, the Type 3 digitals in green and brown, still carried dust from a base 800 miles south. Ranger sat in the passenger seat. 85 pounds of trained German shepherd, tan and black coat, ears rotating like radar dishes. The dog didn't fidget, didn't whine, just watched the road like he always did, waiting for Ethan to tell him what came next. Ethan spotted a diner. Millie's. Small, old, the kind of place that still had handwritten specials on a whiteboard, and coffee that tasted like it was brewed by someone who actually cared. He parked, opened the door for Ranger, walked inside. Nobody looked up at first. A few old-timers at the counter, a heavy-set man reading a newspaper, a young woman in a blue apron carrying plates. Ethan sat in the far corner booth. Ranger lay at his feet, still, alert, invisible unless you knew what to look for. The young waitress came over, blonde hair tied back, tired eyes, but a genuine smile. Her name tag said Lily. "Morning, coffee?" "Black, and whatever's quick." "Eggs and toast work?" "Perfect." She poured his coffee and paused, glancing at Ranger. "Beautiful dog. He okay just sitting there?" Ethan almost smiled. "He's better behaved than most people I know." Lily laughed softly. "I believe that." She walked away, and Ethan wrapped his hands around the warm mug and closed his eyes. Just 5 minutes of peace. That's all he wanted. He didn't get 3. The front door banged open hard enough to rattle the glass. Victor Hale walked in like he owned the place. Because he did. Literally. He'd bought the land 6 months ago, and every person in that diner knew what that meant. Eviction. Demolition. Another parking lot for another strip mall nobody asked for. Victor was mid-50s. Silver hair slicked back, charcoal suit, gold watch catching the overhead light. He moved like a man who'd never been told no and never planned to hear it. Behind him came Officer Dean Marsh, full uniform, badge polished, sidearm on his hip. Marsh was thick-necked, mid-40s, the kind of cop who confused authority with power and used both like a hammer. They didn't sit down. Victor walked straight to the counter where Lily was stacking plates. "Where's your grandmother?" Lily's hands stopped. "She's in the back. Can I help you with something?" "Yeah, you can tell Millie I'm done waiting. The deadline was last Friday. She either signs the buyout agreement or I start the eviction process today." Victor tapped the counter with one manicured finger. "Today, sweetheart. Not tomorrow, not next week." Lily straightened her back. "Mr. Hale, my grandmother built this place with her own hands. She's not going to—" "I don't care what she built." Victor's voice went cold. "I care what I bought. And what I bought includes the ground you're standing on." Marsh stepped forward, thumbs hooked in his belt. "Lily, just pass the message along. Keep it simple, keep it clean." "Or what?" Lily asked, and there was a crack in her voice she couldn't hide. Marsh smiled. Not a kind smile. "Or I come back with a health inspector and a clipboard. And trust me, honey, I'll find something." The diner went silent. The old-timers at the counter stared into their coffee. The heavy-set man folded his newspaper and looked away. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Ethan's hand tightened around his mug. Ranger's ears went forward. Then Millie came out from the kitchen. 62 years old, flour on her apron, steel in her spine. She looked at Victor like she was looking at a stain on her floor. "I heard you all the way in the back, Victor. So let me save you the speech. I'm not selling." Victor turned to her. "Millie, be smart about this." "I am being smart. This diner is all I have left of my husband. You think I'm going to hand it over so you can build another eyesore? I think you're going to hand it over because you don't have a choice." Victor leaned closer. "I've got the deed. I've got the lawyers. And I've got him." He pointed at Marsh. "So unless you want your granddaughter working her shift in handcuffs, I suggest you reconsider." Millie didn't flinch, but Lily did. Her whole body trembled. That's when Victor made his first mistake. He reached out and grabbed Lily's wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make her gasp. Hard enough to pull her toward him. Hard enough to make every person in that diner hold their breath. "Tell your grandmother to sign," Victor said, his mouth close to her ear. "Or next time, I won't ask nicely." A chair scraped against the floor. Every head turned. Ethan Cole stood up slowly, like a man who had done this 1,000 times and never once needed to rush. Ranger rose beside him, silent, locked in, ears flat. "Let go of her arm." Victor turned. Marsh turned. The whole diner turned. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. There was something in the way he stood, in the way his eyes locked onto Victor's hand around Lily's wrist, that made the air in the room feel thinner. Victor squinted. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Take your hand off her. Now." Victor released Lily, but only to face Ethan fully. He looked him up and down. The camo uniform, the dusty boots, the dog. "And who the hell are you supposed to be?" "Nobody you need to know. But I'm telling you once, don't touch her again." Victor laughed. Short, sharp, practiced. "Marsh, you believe this? Some soldier passing through thinks he can tell me what to do in my own town." Marsh stepped forward, hand drifting toward his belt. "Sir, I'm going to need you to sit back down." Ethan didn't move. "She's a teenager. He grabbed her. You watch, and your first instinct is to tell me to sit down?" Marsh's jaw tightened. "I said sit down. That's not a request. And I said don't touch her. That's not a request either." The tension in the diner was suffocating. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. Victor stepped closer to Ethan, invading his space. "Listen to me carefully, soldier boy. I don't know where you came from, and I don't care. But in Cedar Falls, I am the law. I am the money. I am the reason the lights stay on. So you're going to walk back to that booth, finish your eggs, and drive out of my town before I make your life very, very difficult." Ethan looked at him. Really looked at him. The expensive suit, the gold watch, the perfectly practiced intimidation. Then he looked at Lily, shaking, holding her wrist, eyes wet. Then he looked back at Victor. "No." One word. Quiet, final. Victor's face twisted. "What did you just say to me?" I said no. I'm not sitting down. I'm not leaving.
And you're not touching her again.
Marsh grabbed Ethan's arm, hard. That's it. You're coming with me. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Ethan redirected the grab, rotating Marsh's wrist with precision that came from years of training no civilian could replicate. Marsh's knees buckled. His body followed. He hit the floor on one knee, gasping, his arm locked at an angle that promised agony if he resisted. Ethan didn't strike him, didn't choke him, just held him there, controlled, surgical. Ranger stood 2 feet away, teeth slightly bared, a low growl rumbling in his chest like distant thunder. The diner erupted in gasps. "Don't," Ethan said to Marsh, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't reach for your weapon. Don't call for backup. Just breathe." Marsh's face was red. His free hand hovered near his holster, trembling. But he didn't reach. Something in Ethan's eyes told him what would happen if he did. Victor stumbled backward, knocking into a chair.
You just assaulted an officer. That's it. You're done. Marsh, arrest him. Arrest him right now.
Ethan released Marsh and stepped back calmly. Ranger stayed locked in position. Marsh scrambled to his feet, humiliated, breathing hard. His hand went straight to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Marsh. I need immediate backup at Millie's Diner. I've got a hostile military individual assaulting law enforcement. Send units now." Lily grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "You need to go. Please. They'll arrest you. Victor owns the whole department." Ethan looked down at her. Calm. Steady. "I'm not going anywhere." Millie stepped forward. "Young man, she's right. You don't know what these people do to anyone who stands up to them." "Ma'am," Ethan said, "I've stood up to worse." Victor straightened his suit, trying to recover his authority. His hands were shaking, but his voice was poison. "You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic little military life. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take that dog and put it down. And I'm going to make sure you never wear that uniform again." Ethan turned to him, and for the first time, something shifted behind his eyes. Not anger, something colder, something that made Victor Hale, a man who had bullied an entire town into submission, take a full step back. "You can come after me," Ethan said quietly. "But if you touch my dog, I promise you, there won't be a lawyer, a badge, or a dollar amount on this earth that will protect you from what comes next." 2 patrol cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, doors opening. Marsh smiled, bloody lip and all. "Let's see how tough you are now, soldier boy." 2 officers came through the door with their hands already on their weapons. Young guys. Nervous eyes. The kind of cops who followed orders because questioning them meant losing their paycheck. Marsh pointed straight at Ethan. "That's him. Cuff him. Now." The first officer hesitated. He looked at Ethan standing calm with his hands visible. Then at Marsh with his bloody lip and wild eyes. And something didn't add up. "Sir, what exactly happened here?" "What happened is he assaulted me," Marsh barked. "He's military, he's unstable, and he attacked me unprovoked. Get him on the ground." Ethan didn't move, didn't tense. He spoke directly to the younger officer. "Ask anyone in this diner what happened. Every single person in here saw it." "Shut up," Marsh snapped. "You don't get to talk." The second officer stepped toward Ethan. "Sir, we need you to put your hands behind your back." "He helped me." Lily's voice cut through the tension. She stepped forward, still holding her wrist where Victor had grabbed her. "That man grabbed me. Officer Marsh watched and did nothing.
This man is the only one who stood up.
Victor pointed at her.
She's lying. She's emotional. Don't listen to her. I'm not lying,
Lily shouted, and her voice broke in a way that made half the diner flinch. You grabbed me, Mr. Hale. Everyone saw it. Everyone. Frank, the retired Marine at the counter, stood up from his stool. 73 years old, Korea veteran, cap on his head, hands steady as stone. The girl's telling the truth. I watched the whole thing. That man in the suit grabbed her arm. The officer did nothing. And this young man stepped in. Rosa, the school teacher 2 booths over, pulled out her phone. I recorded it. From the moment Mr. Hale started threatening Lily. All of it. Victor's head snapped toward her. Put that phone away.
No.
The word hung in the air. Rosa's hand was shaking, but she didn't lower the phone. Victor stared at her like he was memorizing her face. Marsh turned to the 2 officers. I don't care what these people say. I'm a sworn officer and I'm giving you a direct order. Arrest him. The first officer looked at his partner. His partner looked at the floor. Neither of them moved.
Now!
Marsh screamed. The first officer stepped forward and reached for Ethan's wrist. Sir, I'm sorry. We have to follow procedure. Ethan let him. No resistance. No tension. He put his hands behind his back and felt the cold steel close around his wrists. Ranger whined once, a sharp, confused sound that cut deeper than any growl. It's okay, boy, Ethan said quietly. Stay. Ranger didn't move, but his eyes never left Ethan, not for 1 second. Millie rushed forward.
This is wrong. You all know this is wrong.
Ma'am, step back, the second officer said, but his voice had no conviction in it. Victor smoothed his tie. The color was coming back to his face. The control was returning. Get him out of here, and someone call animal control about that dog. Ethan's head turned. Slow, deliberate. He locked eyes with Victor through the handcuffs, through the officers, through everything. Don't. Victor smirked. It's a public safety issue. Aggressive animal. No visible license. No proof of vaccination. Marsh, make the call. Lily dropped to her knees next to Ranger and wrapped her arms around his neck. You're not taking this dog anywhere. Lily, get away from that animal, Victor ordered. He's not an animal. He's the only one in this room who hasn't threatened me. The diner erupted. Frank slammed his hand on the counter. You should be ashamed of yourself, Hale. Every damn one of you. 3 other regulars stood up. A truck driver named Pete. A retired postal worker named Donna. A farmer named Bill, who hadn't spoken a word in that diner in 6 years. They all stood. Not aggressive, not confrontational. Just standing, refusing to look away. Marsh shoved Ethan toward the door. Move. Ethan walked, back straight, head up. The way he'd been trained. The way he'd walk through places where the danger was real and the stakes were life and death. A small-town diner with a crooked cop didn't even register on his scale. But Ranger? That registered. As they pushed through the door, Ethan heard Victor behind him. Marsh, I want that dog gone before I leave this building. And Ethan made a decision right then. Quiet. Internal. The kind of decision he'd made in combat zones, when the mission parameters changed and there was no time to hesitate. He wasn't leaving Cedar Falls. And Ranger wasn't going anywhere. They put him in the back of the patrol car. No seatbelt, cuffs too tight. The younger officer drove. Marsh followed in his own cruiser. Victor stayed at the diner, making phone calls, already working to control the narrative. At the station, they processed Ethan in a back room. No camera, no recording. Marsh handled it personally. He dropped Ethan's wallet, military ID, and phone on the desk. Picked up the ID and squinted at it, Ethan Cole, E5, United States Navy. Marsh tossed it back down. So what are you, a cook? A mechanic? You fix toilets on aircraft carriers? Ethan said nothing. Marsh leaned on the desk. I asked you a question, and I'm exercising my right not to answer. Marsh smiled. You think rights mean something in here? Look around you. No cameras, no witnesses. It's just me and you. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a felony assault charge. Ethan looked at him with the same calm he'd carried through every second of this. You fabricated this arrest. Everyone in that diner knows it. You know it. So what happens next is up to you. But I'd think carefully. Marsh grabbed the front of Ethan's uniform and yanked him forward. Don't tell me what to think. You walked into my town, embarrassed me in front of civilians, and put your hands on me. I don't care if you're Navy, Army, or the damn Boy Scouts. In here, I'm God. Ethan didn't react, didn't blink, just looked at Marsh the way you look at something small. You done? Ethan asked. Marsh shoved him back into the chair. Then he picked up the phone and dialed. Mr. Hale, yeah, I've got him processed. No cameras, like you said. Pause. Yes, sir. I'm writing it up now. Public intoxication, disorderly conduct, assault on an officer. That should be enough. Another pause. The dog? Yeah, I'll get animal control on it. Give me an hour. He hung up, looked at Ethan. Your dog's getting picked up in 60 minutes. After that, county shelter. After that, he shrugged. Well, you know how shelters work. Something changed in Ethan's face. Not anger, not fear. A stillness that was worse than both. The kind of stillness that comes before a controlled detonation. I want my phone call. Maybe later. That's not how this works, and you know it. Marsh grinned. File a complaint. Ethan leaned forward in his chair, cuffs clinking against the metal armrest. Let me tell you exactly what's going to happen. That woman in the diner, the teacher, she recorded everything. By now it's on her phone, probably backed up to the cloud, probably already sent to someone. You think you can contain that? You think Victor can buy his way out of a video? Marsh's grin flickered. And when NCIS gets involved, and they will, the first thing they'll pull is your body cam footage. You think it's off right now? You sure about that? Because in my experience, officers who think they turned off their cameras are wrong about 40% of the time. Marsh's hand went to his chest, to the camera mounted on his vest. His fingers fumbled with it. Ethan watched him. Too late to check now. Either it's been recording or it hasn't. Either way, you've got a choice to make. You're bluffing. I don't bluff. I'm not built for it. Marsh stared at him for a long time. Then he walked out of the room and slammed the door. Ethan sat alone in the silence. Hands cuffed, no phone, no lawyer. No one coming for him as far as he knew. But he'd been in worse, much worse. Places where the room was smaller, the stakes were higher, and the people on the other side of the door weren't playing cop. They were playing for keeps. He closed his eyes, breathed, counted seconds the way he'd been trained. And he thought about Ranger, alone in that diner, surrounded by strangers, waiting for a command that wasn't coming. Hold on, boy, Ethan thought. Just hold on. Back at the diner, Millie locked the front door. She turned the sign to closed and pulled the blinds. Then she picked up the phone behind the counter and dialed a number she hadn't called in 2 years. James? It's Aunt Millie. I need you, right now. Bring a camera. Lily sat on the floor with Ranger's head in her lap. The dog hadn't moved since Ethan left. His eyes stayed on the door. His breathing was slow, controlled, waiting. Frank pulled up a chair next to Lily. That dog knows something's wrong.
He's waiting for him, Lily whispered. He's waiting for Ethan to come back.
Rosa checked her phone. The video she'd posted 20 minutes ago already had 400 shares. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments.
People are angry, she said. They're tagging the county sheriff. They're tagging the news.
Millie hung up the phone.
James is coming. He works for the state network. He'll be here in 2 hours.
2 hours might be too late, Frank said quietly. Marsh will have that dog picked up in 1. Millie's eyes hardened. She looked at Frank, at Pete and Donna and Bill, at every person still standing in her diner. Then we don't let them take the dog. Frank nodded. I served in Korea. Pete, you were in Desert Storm, right? Pete straightened. Yes, ma'am. Bill? Bill, the farmer who hadn't spoken in 6 years, looked up. Vietnam, 68 to 70. Millie looked at them. 3 veterans, a teacher, a postal worker, a teenage girl, and 1 very patient German shepherd.
Nobody takes that dog, Millie said. Not today.
40 minutes later, an animal control van pulled into the parking lot. Ranger lifted his head. His ears went flat. A low growl rolled through his chest. Lily held him tighter.
It's okay, boy. We've got you.
The officer from Animal Control knocked on the locked door. Ma'am, I've got an order to pick up an unlicensed animal at this address. Millie didn't open the door. She spoke through the glass. That animal is a trained military working dog. He belongs to an active-duty service member who is currently being illegally detained at your police station. You want to take this dog, you bring me a federal court order. Until then, get off my property. The officer looked at her, looked at the 5 people standing behind her, looked at the 85-pound German shepherd whose eyes promised violence with surgical precision. He got back in his van. He picked up his radio.
Dispatch, I'm going to need to speak to a supervisor.
Marsh came back into the room 14 minutes later. Ethan knew because he'd been counting. 14 minutes and 22 seconds. In the field, that was enough time to clear a building, neutralize a threat, and extract a hostage. In this room, it was enough time for Marsh to realize he was in deeper than he thought. Marsh dropped a manila folder on the desk. His face was different now, tighter. The smugness was cracking. Animal Control couldn't get the dog. Ethan didn't respond, but something loosened in his chest, just barely. Your little friends at the diner locked the doors. The old lady threatened my officer with a federal court order. Marsh sat down hard. So now I've got a diner full of civilians obstructing a lawful seizure, a video floating around the internet, and you sitting here looking at me like you've got all the time in the world. I do, Ethan said. Marsh slammed his fist on the desk. You don't! You think you do, but you don't. Victor Hale is on the phone right now with Judge Harmon. 1 signature and your dog is gone. 1 more signature and you're transferred to county lockup where nobody knows your name and nobody cares. Ethan leaned back. Then why are you sweating? Marsh's jaw clenched so hard the veins in his neck stood out. He grabbed Ethan's military ID off the desk and held it up. E5, Petty Officer 2nd Class. That's not exactly high rank, is it? You're nobody. You're a number. The Navy's not going to send a rescue team for some mid-level sailor who got into a bar fight. Diner fight, Ethan corrected. And I didn't start it. Doesn't matter who started it. Matters who finishes it. And that's going to be me. Marsh pulled out a typed report and slid it across the desk. Sign this. It says you were intoxicated, initiated physical contact with a law enforcement officer, and that your animal acted aggressively toward civilians. You sign, you plead guilty, pay the fine, and you're out by tonight. Dog goes to the shelter. You go home. Ethan read it without touching it. Every word. Then he looked up. No, you're making a mistake. I've made mistakes before. This isn't one of them. Marsh stood up and walked behind Ethan. Close. Too close. The kind of positioning meant to intimidate. Let me paint you a picture. You refuse to sign. I book you on felony assault. Victor's lawyer files a civil suit by morning. Your commanding officer gets a call saying one of his sailors is sitting in a county jail on assault charges. How do you think that plays out for your career? Better than it plays out for yours when that video hits the news. Marsh grabbed the back of Ethan's chair and yanked it, spinning him around. What video? Some shaky phone footage from a school teacher? You think that's going to hold up against a sworn officer's testimony? I think it's going to hold up just fine when NCIS pulls your body cam server logs and finds out your camera was transmitting the entire time you thought it was off. Marsh froze. Ethan watched it land, watched the blood drain from Marsh's face, watched the exact moment the man realized he might not have been as careful as he thought. That's not... I turned it off. I always turn it off. Do you? Ethan asked. Or do you press the button and assume it worked? Because those units have a 30-second delay on the kill switch. Department policy in most jurisdictions. You'd know that if you ever read your own manual. Marsh's hand went to his chest again. He fumbled with the camera, pressing buttons, turning it over. His breathing was getting faster. You're bluffing. You said that before. You're bluffing. Check it, Ethan said. Right now. Pull up the server log. If I'm wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. Marsh stared at him. Then he walked to the computer in the corner, typed in his credentials, and pulled up the body cam management system. His fingers were shaking so badly he had to retype his password twice. The log loaded, and every ounce of remaining color left Dean Marsh's face. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Recording since 7:42 a.m., Ethan said, reading the screen from across the room. That's about 6 minutes before you walked into that diner with Victor. Which means everything. The threats, the grab, the arrest, you telling Victor there were no cameras. All of it. Stored on your own department's server." Marsh put both hands on the desk and leaned forward like he was going to be sick. "Delete it. I can delete it." "You could try, but those servers back up to county every 4 hours, and I'm guessing it's already past the first backup window." Marsh spun around. "How do you know this? How do you know any of this? You're a sailor. You're not a cop. You're not IT." Ethan looked at him, just looked, and said nothing. Because the truth was something Dean Marsh wasn't cleared to hear. The truth was that Ethan Cole hadn't been a regular sailor in 8 years. The truth was that the man sitting handcuffed in this back room had operated in environments where the surveillance systems made this small-town police server look like a child's toy. But Ethan didn't say any of that. He just let the silence do the work. The door opened. Victor Hale walked in with a phone pressed to his ear, and fury pressed into every line on his face. "Marsh, Judge Harmon needs more documentation for the seizure order. He wants incident reports, witness statements, and—" He stopped. He looked at Marsh. He saw the sweat, the pale face, the open computer screen. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "We have a problem," Marsh said. "We don't have problems. We solve problems. That's what I pay you for." The body cam was on, Victor. The room went dead. Victor lowered his phone, slowly, like a man setting down a loaded weapon. "What did you say?" "The camera. My body cam. It was recording. Everything. The diner, this room, the phone call where I told you there were no cameras." Marsh's voice cracked. "It's on the server. It already backed up to county." Victor's eyes moved to Ethan. and for the first time, Ethan saw real fear behind them. Not the theatrical anger of a man used to performing dominance. Real fear. The kind that comes when a man who has controlled everything suddenly realizes he controls nothing. "You," Victor said, pointing at Ethan. "You did this." "I didn't touch your equipment. I didn't hack your system. Your own officer recorded himself committing crimes on his own department's camera. I just told him to check." Victor grabbed Marsh by the collar. "Fix it, now. Delete everything." I can't."
It's already backed up. Then call someone who can. Who? The county IT office? They'll want to know why I'm deleting footage.
Victor released him and paced. His composed exterior was disintegrating in real time. The gold watch, the tailored suit. None of it mattered now. He was a man watching his empire crack from the inside. Then his phone rang. He answered it and listened for 10 seconds. His face changed. Something beyond anger, beyond fear, closer to desperation. "That was Harmon," Victor said quietly. "He says there's a news van pulling into Cedar Falls. State network. Someone called them." Marsh leaned against the wall. "It's over." "It's not over," Victor shouted. "It's not over until I say it's over." He turned to Ethan. "What do you want? Money? Is that what this is? Name your price. I'll write you a check right now. 100,000, 200. Just shut this down." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I don't want your money."
Then what? What do you want?
"I want you to leave that woman and her granddaughter alone. Drop the eviction. Void the buyout. Walk away from the diner and never come back." Victor laughed. Bitter. Broken. "You want me to just give up a multi-million-dollar property deal because some soldier with a dog told me to? I want you to do the right thing. But since you don't seem familiar with that concept, I'll settle for you doing the smart thing. Because in about 2 hours, a news crew is going to show up at this station. They're going to ask why an active-duty service member is in handcuffs. They're going to ask why his military working dog was almost seized. And they're going to have a video showing you grabbing a teenage girl's arm while a police officer watched and did nothing." Victor stood still. His breathing was ragged. His hands were fists at his sides. "You can fight it," Ethan continued. "You can hire lawyers. You can call in favors. And maybe you'll win in court. Maybe. But you'll lose everywhere else. Because that video is already out there. And the internet doesn't forget." The front door of the station opened. Marsh and Victor both turned. A woman walked in wearing a navy dress uniform. Service dress blues. Every ribbon perfectly aligned. Commander insignia on her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her posture was steel. Behind her, 2 shore patrol officers, armed, stone-faced. She stopped in the doorway of the back room and took in the scene. Ethan in cuffs, Marsh against the wall, Victor in his $1,000 suit with panic in his eyes. "Which one of you is Officer Marsh?" she asked. Marsh swallowed. "That's me." She held up a credential folder. "Commander Diane Torres, Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm here for Petty Officer Cole." Victor stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. This man assaulted Mr. Hale." Torres didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what happened in that diner, and I know exactly what's on that body cam footage." She paused. "So I'd strongly suggest you stop talking." Victor's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Nothing came out. Torres walked to Ethan. She looked at the cuffs. Then she looked at Marsh with something that made the officer physically shrink. "Take these off. Now." "Ma'am, He's under arrest for... He's under your fabricated arrest for defending a civilian from assault. I've spoken to 3 witnesses by phone in the last 40 minutes. I've seen the video, and I've already contacted NCIS. She stepped closer to Marsh. So you can take off those cuffs voluntarily, or my shore patrol will remove them for you. Your choice. You've got about 5 seconds. Marsh's hands shook as he unlocked the cuffs. Ethan rubbed his wrists, stood up, rolled his shoulders. Torres looked at him, and the faintest trace of something, pride maybe, respect, crossed her face.
You good, Cole? I'm good, ma'am, but my dog is still at the diner.
Your dog is fine. I spoke to a woman named Millie. She said, and I quote, "Over my dead body is anyone touching this dog." She sounds like good people. Ethan almost smiled. She is. Torres turned back to Marsh and Victor. Her voice dropped low, professional, final. Here's what's going to happen. NCIS is opening an investigation into the unlawful arrest of an active duty service member. Officer Marsh, your body cam footage has been flagged for preservation. Any attempt to delete, alter, or tamper with it will result in federal obstruction charges. She shifted her gaze to Victor. Mr. Hale, your involvement in directing a law enforcement officer to fabricate charges against a member of the United States military places you in very specific legal territory. I'd get a lawyer. A real one. Victor's phone buzzed in his hand. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at Marsh. Then he looked at the door like he was calculating the distance. Don't, Torres said. Running makes it worse. The news van pulled into the station parking lot. Through the window, they could see the State Network logo on the side. A reporter stepped out with a cameraman. Marsh sat down heavily. He put his head in his hands. Victor Hale, the man who owned half of Cedar Falls, the man who had never lost a fight in his life because he'd always bought the referees, stood in that back room and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Powerlessness. And in the silence that followed, Ethan Cole walked out of that station the same way he'd walked in. Calm, steady, unhurried. Because men like Ethan didn't rush. They didn't panic. They didn't perform. They just did what needed to be done. And then they moved on. Ethan walked out of the station, and the sunlight hit him like a wall. He stopped, breathed, let his body register that it was over. At least this part of it. Torres followed him out. The shore patrol officers flanked the door behind her, standing like statues. Cole. He turned. Torres studied him for a moment. Not like a commanding officer evaluating a subordinate. Like someone who needed to say something important and was choosing her words carefully. I didn't come here by accident. Your CO got a call from a woman named Rosa Gutierrez, schoolteacher. She didn't know who to contact, so she called the base switchboard and told the operator that a Navy service member had been unlawfully arrested in Cedar Falls. The operator flagged it. Your CO saw your name and called me directly. Why you, ma'am? Torres paused. Because your CO knows your file, and he knew that if Ethan Cole was in handcuffs, it wasn't because he did something wrong. It was because he did something right, and someone didn't like it. Ethan said nothing, but his jaw tightened. I pulled your record on the drive over, Torres continued. 10 years active. 3 combat deployments, Bronze Star with Valor, Navy Cross. She lowered her voice. The operation in Kandahar, the hostage extraction in Mosul, the thing in Syria that doesn't officially exist. Ma'am? I'm not asking you to confirm anything. I'm telling you that I know exactly who's standing in front of me. And I need you to understand that what happened today is going to get very big, very fast. That video has over 50,000 shares. State news is here. National outlets are calling. NCIS is en route. Ethan's expression didn't change. "I just want my dog back." Torres almost smiled. "Then let's go get your dog." They drove to the diner. Torres, the shore patrol. Ethan in the passenger seat of the military vehicle, still in his dusty NWU Type 3 uniform, still carrying the weight of 31 sleepless hours. When they pulled into the parking lot, Ethan saw something that stopped him cold. There were people everywhere. Not just the regulars from this morning. Dozens, maybe 40 or 50, standing in the parking lot, sitting on tailgates, holding signs that said, "Free the Seal," and "Millie stands," and "Badge doesn't mean bully." Frank was in the middle of them, Korea cap on, talking to a young reporter with a microphone. Rosa was showing her phone to a group of women who covered their mouths as they watched the video. Pete and Bill and Donna stood by the diner door like sentinels. And in the window, Lily, sitting on the floor, Ranger's head still in her lap. The dog hadn't moved. Ethan got out of the vehicle, and the crowd went quiet. Every eye turned to him. He felt it like a physical pressure, the weight of all that attention, all that expectation. He wasn't built for this. He was built for dark rooms and silent operations, and missions that would never make the news. Not parking lots full of strangers holding signs with his name on them. Then Frank walked over. 73 years old, straight back, firm handshake. "Welcome back, son. I wasn't gone that long." "Long enough. Your dog missed you." Ethan pushed through the diner door. The bell chimed overhead, and Ranger heard it. The dog's head snapped up, his ears went forward, his whole body tensed. Then he saw Ethan. 85 pounds of trained military canine, a dog who had maintained perfect discipline for hours, who hadn't barked, hadn't whined, hadn't broken position once, launched himself across the diner floor and hit Ethan in the chest hard enough to stagger him backward. Ethan dropped to one knee. Ranger's paws were on his shoulders. The dog's whole body shook. Not trained behavior, not military precision, just a dog who loved his person and thought he might never see him again. Ethan wrapped his arms around Ranger's neck and held him, his face buried in the dog's fur, his shoulders shaking once, just once, before he caught himself. Lily wiped her eyes. Millie pressed her hand to her mouth. Frank turned away and pretended to study something on the ceiling. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. After a long moment, Ethan stood up. Ranger pressed against his leg, refusing to break contact. Millie came forward. She took Ethan's face in both hands the way a mother would and looked him straight in the eyes. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" "No, ma'am. I'm fine." "You are not fine. You haven't slept. You haven't eaten a real meal. And you just spent 3 hours handcuffed in a room with a man who doesn't deserve to wear that badge." She released his face and pointed at a booth. "Sit down. I'm making you breakfast. Real breakfast. And you're going to eat every bite." "Ma'am, you don't have to." "I didn't ask if I had to. I said sit down." Ethan sat. "Because you didn't argue with Millie Patterson. Not if you knew what was good for you." Torres came through the door and assessed the scene. The crowd outside. The diner full of supporters. The retired veterans standing guard. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "This is Commander Torres. Yes, I'm on site. The situation is contained, but the media presence is significant. I need a public affairs officer here within the hour. And tell NCIS the witnesses are cooperative, every single one of them." She hung up and sat across from Ethan. Ranger wedged himself under the table between them, his head on Ethan's boot. "The reporter outside wants a statement from you." "No." "I figured. But you should know what's happening. Rosa's video has crossed 200,000 views. It's on 3 national news sites. The county sheriff arrived at the station 20 minutes ago and took formal custody of Marsh's body cam footage. Marsh has been suspended pending investigation. Badge and weapon confiscated. Ethan processed it. And Victor? Still at the station. His lawyer's on the way from the city. But the county sheriff's not letting him leave. They've opened a preliminary investigation into bribery, obstruction, and conspiracy to file false charges against military personnel. That last one is federal. Lily slid into the booth next to Torres. What about Judge Harmon? He was going to sign an order to take Ranger. Torres looked at her. Judge Harmon rescinded the order 40 minutes ago and recused himself from all cases involving Victor Hale. I expect he'll resign by the end of the week. He should go to jail, Lily said. Her voice had an edge that wasn't there this morning, a hardness earned in a single day. That's for the investigation to determine, Torres said carefully. But between the body cam footage, the video, and the witnesses, the evidence is substantial. Millie came out with a plate. Eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns. She set it in front of Ethan like she was daring him not to eat. Thank you, ma'am. Stop calling me ma'am. My name is Millie. Thank you, Millie. She sat down next to Lily and looked at Ethan while he ate. Really looked at him. The tired eyes, the quiet discipline, the way his left hand rested on Ranger's head even while he ate with his right. Why were you in Cedar Falls? Millie asked. You're not from here. You were just passing through. Ethan chewed slowly, set down his fork, reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. From inside he removed a photograph, old, creased, the kind of photo that had been carried across oceans and through war zones. He placed it on the table. Millie picked it up, and the air left her body. It was a photograph of 2 men in Navy uniforms, young, grinning, arms around each other's shoulders. One of them was unmistakable, tall, broad-shouldered, with Millie's late husband's unmistakable grin. The other was shorter, dark-haired, with the same jaw and the same steady eyes as the man sitting across from her. That's my husband, Millie whispered. That's Robert. And that's my father, Ethan said. Thomas Cole. They served together on the USS Stark, Persian Gulf, 1987. Millie's hand trembled. Lily leaned in close. Grandma? The Stark was hit by Iraqi missiles, Millie said, her voice thick. 37 sailors died that day. Robert carried a man out of the fire. Burns on his arms, smoke in his lungs, and he went back in twice. She looked at the photo. He never told me who he saved. My father, Ethan said. Thomas Cole. He had 3rd-degree burns over 40% of his body. The doctors said he wouldn't make it. Robert stayed with him in the hospital for 3 weeks, gave blood twice, called my grandmother every night to tell her my dad was still fighting. Millie's tears fell on the photograph. She didn't wipe them. My dad survived because of your husband. He went on to serve 20 more years, retired as a senior chief. He died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Ethan paused. His voice stayed level, but the effort it took was visible. Before he died, he gave me that photo and told me to find Robert Patterson and say thank you. I never got the chance. I was deployed when Robert passed. Millie closed her eyes. So I came here, Ethan said. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for you. I wanted to shake your husband's hand and tell him my father never forgot what he did. But Robert was gone. And then I walked into your diner and saw a man threatening his family. He looked at Millie. I couldn't save Robert, but I could do this. The diner was silent. Frank had his cap in his hands. Rosa was crying. Pete was staring at the floor. Lily had her arm around her grandmother, holding her tight. Millie reached across the table and took Ethan's hand. Her grip was fierce. The grip of a woman who had buried her husband, raised her granddaughter, fought to keep her business alive, and never once asked for help.
Robert would have done the same thing, she said. If he'd walked into a diner and seen someone hurting a stranger, he would have stood up. That's who he was.
Ethan nodded. That's who my father was, too. I think that's why they were friends. Torres watched the exchange without a word. She had read Ethan's service record. She knew what he was capable of. She had seen the classified reports, the mission summaries, the commendations that would never be made public. But this, a man sitting in a diner holding an old woman's hand, with a dog at his feet and a photograph on the table. This was the part they never put in the files. Outside, the crowd was growing. James Patterson, Millie's nephew, had arrived with his camera crew. He was interviewing Frank, who was telling anyone who would listen about the morning's events with the precision of a man who had given military debriefs. The county sheriff's SUV pulled up next. Sheriff Margaret Dawson stepped out. 60 years old.
No nonsense. She had been elected on a platform of cleaning up local corruption and had spent 3 years running into the wall that was Victor Hale's money. Now that wall had a crack in it. She walked into the diner, looked around, and found Torres. "Commander, I'm Sheriff Dawson. I've secured the body cam footage and suspended Officer Marsh. I've also placed 2 additional officers on administrative leave, pending review of their involvement." "The 2 who responded to the backup call?" Torres asked. "Yes, they cuffed an active-duty service member on a fabricated charge, without conducting any investigation. At minimum, that's negligence. At maximum, it's conspiracy." Torres nodded. "NCIS will want to coordinate with your office. They'll have our full cooperation." Dawson turned to Ethan. She studied him the way experienced law enforcement studies people. Not with suspicion, but with assessment. "You're Cole." "Yes, ma'am. I've been trying to build a case against Victor Hale for 2 years. Never had enough. Never had witnesses willing to go on record. He's got this town so scared that people would rather lose their businesses than speak up." She paused. "Until today." She looked at the crowd outside, at Frank giving his interview, at Rosa showing her video to the news crew, at Pete and Bill and Donna standing firm. "You didn't just help one girl in a diner, son. You cracked the dam. And now everything Victor Hale has done to this town for the last decade is about to come flooding out." Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. Torres glanced at it. A text from an unknown number. "That's NCIS," Torres said. "They're 30 minutes out." Ethan picked up the phone, read the message, set it back down. Then he looked at Millie, at Lily, at the photograph still lying on the table between them. "I came here to say thank you to a man who saved my father's life," Ethan said quietly. "I think he's still saving people. Through you. Through this place. Through everything he built." Millie squeezed his hand one more time. Then she stood up, wiped her eyes, straightened her apron, and walked behind the counter. "All right," she said, her voice steady again, the voice of a woman who had survived worse and would survive this too. "If half the town is standing in my parking lot, somebody's going to need to eat. Lily, start the grill. We're opening back up." Lily smiled through her tears. "Yes, ma'am." Ranger's tail thumped against the floor once, twice. And the diner, the one Robert Patterson built with his own hands, the one Victor Hale tried to take, the one a stranger and his dog helped save, came back to life. NCIS arrived in 2 black SUVs 30 minutes after Torres made the call. 3 agents in suits, credentials out before their feet touched the pavement. The lead agent, a woman named Special Agent Karen Voss,
walked past the news crew without a word, past the crowd without a glance, and straight into the diner. She found Torres at the counter. They exchanged a handshake that said they'd worked together before. "Where's the footage?" "County Sheriff secured the body cam server. Full recording. 7 hours and 14 minutes, starting from when Marsh clipped it on at the beginning of his shift. Everything's on it. The diner confrontation, the arrest, the back room, the phone call with Hale, where Marsh confirmed no cameras were present." Torres paused, while being recorded on camera. Voss didn't smile, but something flickered behind her eyes. "And the civilian video?" "Over 400,000 shares as of 20 minutes ago. The school teacher who recorded it has the original file preserved. Chain of custody is clean." "Witnesses?" "Every person in this diner is willing to go on record." The retired Marine, Frank DeLuca, has already given a sworn statement to Sheriff Dawson. He's sharp. Clear timeline. Specific details. He'll hold up on the stand. Voss turned to Ethan, who was sitting in the corner booth with Ranger pressed against his leg. The dog watched the NCIS agents with professional interest, the way a working dog evaluates new variables in an environment. "Petty Officer Cole, I need your full statement." "Yes, ma'am." "Not here. I need it formal, recorded. We'll set up at the sheriff's office." Ethan stood. Ranger stood with him. Voss looked at the dog. "He goes everywhere with you?" "Yes, ma'am." "Fine. Bring him." They drove to the county sheriff's office. Dawson had cleared a conference room. Voss set up a recorder, placed her credentials on the table, and sat across from Ethan. "Start from the beginning. Everything." Ethan told it straight. No embellishment, no emotion. Just facts delivered in sequence with the precision of an after-action report. The diner. Victor's threats. Lily's wrist. Marsh's complicity. The arrest. The back room. The fabricated charges. The phone call. The body cam. Voss listened without interrupting. When he finished, she turned off the recorder. "Off the record. How did you know about the body cam delay?" "Standard equipment briefing. We use similar units in the field. The 30-second kill switch delay is a known feature across most law enforcement models." "And if the camera had actually been off?" Ethan looked at her. "Then I'd still be in that room. But Marsh didn't know that. And guilty people don't check their cameras unless they're afraid of what's on them." Voss studied him for a long moment. Then she stood up. "Your statement is the cleanest I've taken in 6 years. Thank you." She walked out. Through the window, Ethan could see her making phone calls, one after another. The machinery of federal justice was grinding into motion, and Victor Hale was directly in its path. That afternoon, the story exploded. James Patterson's report aired on the state network at noon. By 2 o'clock, it had been picked up by CNN, Fox, and every major outlet in between. The headline wrote itself. "Navy SEAL defends teenage waitress from wealthy bully and corrupt cop." The video played on loop. Victor grabbing Lily's wrist, Marsh doing nothing, Ethan standing up. The calm voice, the controlled intervention, the arrest of the wrong man. By evening, the video had crossed 3 million views. By the next morning, it was 12 million. The phone calls started coming into the diner around 4 that afternoon. First from other business owners in Cedar Falls, then from neighboring towns, then from strangers across the state. Millie answered every one. A hardware store owner named Jean called first. "Millie, I saw the news. Victor did the same thing to me 2 years ago." Marsh showed up with a fire inspector and shut me down for 3 weeks over a code violation that didn't exist. I never said anything because I was scared. Then, a restaurant owner from the next county. I've got records, emails from Victor's attorney, threatening legal action if I didn't sell my property. I kept everything. Then a motel owner, a dry cleaner, a woman who ran a daycare. One after another. 8 calls in 2 hours, all with the same story. Victor Hale buying land, pressuring owners, using Marsh to enforce compliance, and using Judge Harmon to provide legal cover. Sheriff Dawson took notes on every call. By the end of the day, she had enough to expand the investigation from a single incident to a pattern of racketeering that spanned a decade. Marsh broke first. 2 days after the arrest, facing federal charges for filing false reports, unlawful detention of military personnel, and conspiracy, Marsh asked for a deal. He'd testify against Victor in exchange for a reduced sentence. He gave NCIS everything. Bank records showing Victor's payments, text messages coordinating fake inspections, emails from Judge Harmon confirming he'd sign whatever Victor needed. Voss called Torres. Marsh flipped. Full cooperation. We've got enough for a federal grand jury. Torres relayed it to Ethan, who was sitting on the tailgate of his truck behind the diner, throwing a tennis ball for Ranger. The dog retrieved it with the same focus he brought to everything. Total commitment. Zero hesitation. It's not just Cedar Falls, Torres said. Marsh says Victor had the same operation running in 3 other towns. Different cops, different judges. Same playbook. Ethan caught the ball from Ranger's mouth. How many people did he hurt? We're still counting. Victor Hale was arrested at his home on a Thursday morning. Federal marshals, 3 vehicles, handcuffs in his own driveway, while his neighbors watched. The charges filled 4 pages. Bribery, fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation, racketeering, unlawful seizure of property, corruption of public officials. His lawyer issued a statement calling it a politically motivated overreach. Nobody believed it. Judge Harmon resigned the same day, quietly. No statement, no press conference. Just a 1-paragraph letter to the county clerk's office. 3 weeks later, he was disbarred. The 2 officers who had responded to Marsh's backup call were terminated. Internal Affairs found that both had participated in previous incidents of intimidation on Victor's behalf. One had personally delivered eviction threats to a 70-year-old widow who owned a flower shop on Main Street. Rosa Gutierrez, the school teacher who recorded the video that started everything, was named Cedar Falls Citizen of the Year. At the ceremony, she stood at the podium and said 4 words. I just pressed record. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. Millie's Diner became the most famous restaurant in the state overnight. Customers drove hours to eat there. A GoFundMe, started by Frank DeLuca, raised $312,000 in 11 days. Millie used it to pay off her lease, renovate the kitchen, hire 2 additional staff, and establish a scholarship fund in Robert's name. The Robert Patterson Memorial Scholarship, for children of military veterans pursuing careers in healthcare. The first recipient was Lily. She got into nursing school that fall. Full scholarship, top of the admissions class. On her first day, she wore a small pin on her scrubs, a tiny American flag, the kind you could buy at any gas station for $1. Robert had worn one every day of his life. Frank organized a Veterans Appreciation Dinner at the diner. Word spread. 40 veterans showed up. Then 60. Ethan looked at the crowd. His throat worked. He wasn't the man who gave speeches. He'd spent his career in the shadows, doing things that would never be acknowledged, serving a country that would never know his name. But these people weren't asking for a speech. They were asking for the truth. I didn't do anything special, Ethan said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner. I saw a man threaten a girl. I saw a cop let it happen. And I couldn't sit there and eat my eggs and pretend it wasn't my business." He paused. "My father taught me that the uniform doesn't make you brave. Brave is what you do when nobody's ordering you to do it." Every person in that diner that morning, Millie, Lily, Frank, Rosa, Pete, Bill, Donna, they all stood up. Not because they had training, not because they had weapons, because they had something harder to carry than either of those things. He looked at Frank, at Millie, at Lily in the front row, tears streaming. They had conscience, and they used it. That's the story, not me. Nobody clapped. Nobody cheered. The room just held him in a silence that said more than any applause ever could. Then Frank lifted his hand in a salute. Slow, deliberate, the way he'd been taught 50 years ago at Paris Island. One by one, every veteran in the room followed. 100 salutes. For a man who didn't want them, who probably didn't think he deserved them, who would drive away tomorrow and never speak of this again. Ethan returned the salute, held it, then dropped his hand and walked to the back of the room where Ranger was waiting. The dog pressed his nose into Ethan's palm. Ethan knelt down and rested his forehead against Ranger's. "Good boy," he whispered. "We're done here." He left Cedar Falls the next morning, before sunrise. No goodbye tour, no press conference. He stopped at the diner one last time. The lights were off. The closed sign hung in the window. But there was something new on the door, a framed photograph, the same one Ethan had carried in his wallet. Two young sailors, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. Robert Patterson and Thomas Cole. USS Stark, 1987. Underneath, in Millie's handwriting, "Because good men don't look away." Ethan stood there for a long time. Ranger sat beside him, patient as always. Then he got in his truck, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. The road stretched ahead. Quiet. Empty. The sun was just breaking the horizon, turning everything gold. He didn't know where he was going next. Didn't need to. Men like Ethan Cole didn't chase destinations. They followed the road until someone needed them. And someone always did. Ranger shifted in the passenger seat, ears forward, watching the road the way he always did. Ethan reached over and rested his hand on the dog's back. "Just you and me, boy." Ranger's tail thumped once against the seat, and that was enough. It had always been enough. Because courage doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't wait for permission or applause or cameras. It just stands up when everyone else sits down, and walks away when the job is done. This story touched millions of hearts. If it touched yours, let us know with a like, a comment, and a subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the world doesn't change because of powerful people. It changes because of good ones.